How's it going, everyone? Ish with Hyte here, and welcome to part 2 of our series focusing on X50, our brand new modern performance case. In part 1, we took a quick overview of the features and key highlights of X50 and X50 Air, which you can find in the description down below if you missed that. And for part 2, we're now focusing on guiding you through a full system build inside the X50, especially in our wonderful taro milk colorway with matching fans, SPF, and USB hub. So let's go ahead and get started. So to get things started, we've already placed our CPU inside the motherboard socket to protect the pins from any damage. So that's the first step I would advise is as soon as you get the motherboard out, make sure to place your CPU in the socket, make sure it's aligned properly, and then we can get started with the next steps. So in terms of ease of build, it's going to be easiest to install the SPF without any obstructions from the RAM, which is why we've got it off to the side. Your SSDs and anything else you're installing into the I/O, that's fine to pre-prep and pre-install before we install the SPF. So to get things started with the SPF, we want to remove the included mounting brackets that all AMD motherboards ship with. So we're going to take these out. You won't have to save the screws because we actually provide you 4 new screws in the box with the SPF. So we're just going to set this off to the side. After we remove that, we want to make sure to unsocket this ILM. And ILM stands for Integrated Loading Mechanism. This is what helps retain the CPU in the socket. Now, it's very important that you open it up before you unscrew it. Otherwise, you risk the spring launching this up and potentially damaging something else on your motherboard. So make sure to open up the ILM and make sure the CPU is in there, because that's what's going to protect your motherboard pins from any damage to the socket, which is exceptionally crucial. Otherwise, you're going to have to take this back and RMA it or take a loss on the motherboard. And we don't want you risking any damage to your components during the build process. All right, we're going to open up the SPF box. It's going to come with our solid processor frame and thermal goop. So as you can see, there's our SPF. We're going to set that off to the side here. We've got 4 included screws. That's for the socket. And then an L-shaped Torx wrench that will actually help with installing the SPF inside of the system. So let's go ahead and open up the ILM. For this, you're going to want to use the included Torx wrench. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to back it into place and then slowly unscrew it. Now be very gentle with this. You don't want to risk any damage to the motherboard. And once it clicks, that means, okay, you've walked it back all the way. Go ahead and work on the other side of the socket. Again, keep going until you hear that click. All 4 corners. Okay, so now that we've walked all 4 screws back with the included L-shaped Torx wrench, what we're going to do is we're going to gently lift up the ILM and just take it off of the socket. Simple as that. Now, again, crucial, keep the CPU in the socket to protect the pins. Next, we're going to take our SPF. Again, we've got the Taro version here. That way, we can color match the rest of the case. Next, we're going to put the SPF gently on top of the CPU, and it should easily align because of the specific design that AM5 CPUs have. Then, we're going to take the 4 included screws in the packaging and screw them back in to each hole of the socket. So let's go ahead and take these out. So now that we've got the screws out, go ahead and place 1 in each corner of the SPF. And again, with the included L-shaped wrench, go ahead and walk them back until they sit back inside the screw mounting hole. Okay, and then from there, you want to gently tighten a few rotations at a time. Make sure to use a crisscross method, and then remember the number of rotations you do, and try to keep that the same every single time. You want to walk this back in a symmetrical fashion in all 4 spots. So as you can see, I'm walking it back twice per screw, angling the same way until I hit a little resistance. Once you get that similar wall of resistance, go ahead and stop screwing in. You don't want to over tighten these, as it could risk damaging your CPU motherboard socket. So as soon as you stop rotating it with just your thumb and your index finger, that's when I would recommend, okay, that's enough. You don't want to use any additional force or leverage inside the socket. So we've got it securely in all 4 holes. Now the motherboard is ready for the RAM. We'll go ahead and insert this into the 2nd and 4th slots. Again, if you're using any type of motherboard that has 4 slots for DRAM, the preferred slots are going to be the ones farthest away from the socket. So the 4th and the 2nd, if you're looking at it this way, are typically the best. Again, if you check your motherboard, it'll usually have a diagram showing you 2 lines for which are the 2 preferred slots if you only have 2 sticks. So make sure to just abide by that for the best compatibility and performance out of the box. All right, now that we've had our motherboard prepped, let's clean away some of the excess mess and let's install it into the X50. So now we're going to prep to put this motherboard inside of the X50. So the easiest way to do this is going to be laying the X50 flat on its back and making sure that the feet are facing you. So the bottom of the case should be facing you as you are building this. And then simply slide this panel up, lift, and take it out. And there, you should be all set for access inside the X50's motherboard tray. Now, X50 fits all motherboard sizes, all the way up to EATX. We will list the compatibility on screen right here as far as sizing and fitment for EATX motherboards. Now, what you're going to want to do is find the standoffs and align the motherboard with the standoffs here. So, once you've got it into place, the I/O shield, double check and make sure the screw holes all line up. And once all of them line up for the motherboard, go and take your screwdriver and your motherboard screws and we'll fill in all the slots. Let's do that right now. Now for stability reasons, again, crisscross method is preferred. So I'm just going to go ahead and screw all 4 corners in a crisscross pattern in first. Got the top right. Now we're doing the bottom left. And then we're going to move to the top left. And then bottom right. Now we'll do the center. So most motherboards will have a center mounting point, but you're going to want to check your motherboard manual to make sure where it's at or visually inspect it. Now, for most modern motherboards that come with an oversized heatsink for your primary M.2 slot, chances are the screw hole is actually beneath the heatsink, which it is on this one. So we're simply going to lift this up, remove it, and as you can see underneath that motherboard heatsink, we got the screw. So we're going to screw in the center. And there you have it. If you're in a rush and you want just a quick stability of the motherboard and all 4 corners in the center, this is the bare minimum I would advise you at least screw in if you want a fully functioning and safe system. But obviously, preferred that you would screw in all of them. So let's go ahead and do the rest. Top center. Left middle, right middle, and lastly, bottom center. Now for demonstration purposes, we haven't installed a primary M.2 drive in the motherboard, but obviously if you are building the system and planning on using it, you will want a primary SSD, an NVMe of some sort for the best performance in the primary M.2 slot. So let's go ahead and put the heatsink back on. And right there. You can see that's securely locked into place. And now we've actually fully installed our motherboard inside of the X50. See how easy that was? No sharp corners, no hard edges, plenty of space for you to install and work with without any obstructions inside this case. Next up, let's do the fans. So we're going to have space for 10 fans inside the X50. You can do 3 up front, 3 on the side, 3 in the bottom, and 1 in the back. Let's go do that with our brand new color-matched FA12 fans in Taro Milk. I'll break those out in just a second. So these are the brand new Hyte FA12s. You guys asked for them, we made them. Color-matched fans specifically down to the perfect shade with our Y and X series cases. These are available in 6 different colorways that are color-matched perfectly to the X50. We've got Snow White, Pitch Black, Wild Cherry, Strawberry Milk, Taro Milk, and Matcha Milk colorways. Obviously, for the build here, because it's a Taro Milk case, we're going to be using the Taro Milk fans, so it's perfectly matched in terms of aesthetics. Now do note that these fans do come in a 4-pack. That way you get one full side of the X50 along with a rear fan. Doesn't matter whatever pack you buy. So we would recommend you buy 3 packs for full coverage, but in the case you have a 360mm AIO, you can still make do with just 2 packs. That'll give you 1 extra fan just in case, but it'll provide full coverage inside of your case. Now in terms of installing into X50, let's do the bottom first since we've already got the case in this orientation. And the easiest way is going to be actually to take the magnetic dust filter off the bottom. So simply pull away and it comes right off. And that's going to give you unobstructed access to the fan chamber down below. Now this is what we call our cold floor cooling, space for up to 3 extra thick 120mm fans down below. And yes, they support all the modern smart connectors and ecosystems. Doesn't matter if you're using Corsair, Lee, Fantex, Hyte, whoever makes it, I can assure you, we tested it, I personally validated it. It will fit down below with plenty of cable routing channels, so you have no problem hooking up your fans down below. Now, for the FA12s, they are your traditional style PWM fan. That way, we just need a PWM connector on your motherboard, keeping it very simple, very easy. It's a nice braided sleeved cable, so it doesn't look messy at all. And it goes into a perfectly matched fan frame and blade that is color matched to our X and Y series cases. Now, in terms of airflow, typically, unless you have reverse flow fans, which the FA12s are not, your airflow is going to go in through the side where you can see the blade impeller and out the back where you can see the frame with the different wires coming out of it. So, which means for the FA12s, their air is going to flow in through this way, which means when we put it into the bottom of the case, we want it facing the bottom. So you can actually see the Hyte logo and the spinning blade through the bottom of the X50. Now in terms of cable routing, again, we've got plenty of cable routing channels. And so to make this quick and painless, we're just going to route that down the back and out from below. And we're going to slide this fan into position. Now again, because we've thought about cable management and the routing channels, it's very easy to slide this into place and screw it in while also cable managing. So what we're going to do is align the holes, and keep in mind the holes for this, you're actually going to be screwing in down here, which is 1, down here, which is 2, up here, which is 3, and then actually the 4th one is inside this leg. So go ahead and take the fan screws that came in your pack with the FA12s, and we're going to use 4 of them per fan to screw it into the chassis. The easiest way to do this is going to be by holding the fan in place as you screw in the 4 holes. And again, the same techniques apply here. To make the routing and positioning easier, you're going to want to do the opposite ends first. That way it's perfectly aligned in all 4 holes, making it really easy for you to screw in later. So let's go ahead and screw in the 2 sides. Now you want to be slightly gentle with these. Don't screw them in all the way in case you need to make some adjustments and sizing and fitment. So we'll just screw them in, I would say about 80% of the way. Keep that last 20% as wiggle room, and then we'll just go in with the remaining 2 holes. Again, 80%-ish in. And so for the last screw, we're actually going to be installing it into the bottom of the foot. The middle section of the foot is actually where the screw goes to line up with the bottom fan hole. Now, keep in mind, for this last screw in particular, you won't be able to use a screwdriver with a thick shaft because the hole on the actual leg won't allow you to push all the way in to make contact with the actual mounting point. So if you're using a traditional LTT screwdriver, for example, you won't actually be able to fit this in. But because we've already installed the other 3 screws, you're totally fine. You don't have to, but if you want to put all 4 in, make sure to use a screwdriver with a thinner shaft or just a traditional screwdriver that might come with some accessories. And now that we've got the 4th one, we can actually screw these in all the way. So I'm going fully tighten for that one. And then we'll go back in with our LTT screwdriver and tighten up the remaining 4 screws. And it's good to apply some pressure from the back of the fan into the chassis. That way you get the holes fully aligned and screw fully out. That way you can screw it in all the way. So that's 1. Now let's go ahead and repeat that for 2 and 3. All right, there we have it. Now that we've installed the 1, 2, and 3 fans into the bottom of the chassis, let's go ahead and put the magnetic dust cover back on. Again, it'll just snap right into place. And then we can focus on the rear fan. Again, it'll be easiest to keep the X50 on its back and facing towards you with the PSU towards the top. That way it's easiest to access the fan screws and the placement by holding it with one hand and screwing in with the other. So let's go ahead and take our fan. Again, make sure you keep in mind the way the cable routes out. Obviously it comes out the side, so it's going to be easiest for it to install this way. That way the cable feeds directly to the back of the case with minimal obstruction. So let's go ahead and route that back. And install the fan that way. Okay, so now you're going to notice we've got these 4 rails here that allow you to peek the fan through. And you can slide it or towards the top or down below. Again, depends on your clearance for other components. Typically, I would advise putting it closer to the top. That way, in case your GPU has extra thickness or something special, or your motherboard has some sort of extra I/O, it clears that. So let's go ahead and position it somewhere towards the center for all 4. And again, you can keep it resting there and make sure to use the screws to align it in place before you actually screw all the way in. So let's go grab our screws real quick. All right, here we are with our screws. Again, just slightly put them in just so you can align the fan. Don't screw it in all the way. I would say for this one, unlike the bottom where we went 80%, go 50% in for this one, and then we'll tighten them once we're happy with the placement. And by going about 50%, what this allows you to do is essentially float the fan on these rails and slide them up or down so you get the perfect placement depending on where you want, as you can see right here. That way it gives you a little bit more flexibility before you fully tighten everything down. For this build, I would say I like symmetry, so we'll target halfway for all the rails, which we seem to have right here. So now I'm going to go ahead and tighten up all the way. It might slide around, so just be very careful with placement and make sure you don't over tighten and push through the metal rails here. That is a potential concern depending on the type of screws you have with other fans potentially. If they're too thin, they'll pierce through. If they're too thick, they might not go in all the way. So just keep in mind the type of head that your screw has. Obviously with the FA12s, we made sure it fits perfectly and matches perfectly, so you shouldn't have any issues with that in the X50. There we go. Our rear fan is installed and ready for use. Now the next step is going to be crucial. It's going to be picking, does your cooler go on the front or the side of the case? And this is going to come down to compatibility. If you have an extra thick radiator, the side might be a little challenging because of the length of your GPU, which is why we recommend you typically install AIO coolers towards the front of the case. That way you don't have any issues if you have an extra thick cooler, like the thick Q60, for example, that's 84 millimeters thick. That will actually impede with a lot of GPUs that are full size if you install it on the side. So if you have an extra thick radiator, definitely install it towards the front. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to install it on the side. And yes, of course, you've paid for a nice, beautiful cooler. You probably want to appreciate its looks. So it's totally fine to install it on the side as long as it's less than 75 millimeters thick with the cooler and the fans together. Up front, you can have it up to 105 millimeters thick, which is insane. We get massive dual 360 millimeter rad support inside of this case on the front and side with an extra large radiator fitting up front. Now for demonstration purposes, I actually want to show you our very cool and unique modular front radiator mount. So we'll mount the cooler on the front, which means we can fit 3 more FA12s here on the side. Let's go ahead and do that right now. Now to install it on the side of the case, you're going to want to take the side panel off. And this is the side full coverage micro mesh panel on the back of the case. Again, just lift up and away and should come right off. And this will expose all the wiring that we have done so far for all the fans, as well as give you clear access to the side. That way you can screw in the fans here. Let's go and take a few more FA12s out and screw them in to our X50 on the side. Now for FA12s, again, we're going to want to be mindful of airflow orientation. We want fresh air coming in through the side of the case, which means the frame is going to be facing the inside and the blade is going to be facing the outside. I'll show you what I mean in just a second. And for aesthetic reasons, if you want it to look nice, make sure the text is lining up so it looks correct when looking at it from the side of the case, because this is what you're actually going to be able to see. So let's go and put it in. We're going to route this cable through the side first and send that through to the back. And then we'll worry about it later. So first things first, again, line it up. And just like we did for the other one, make sure you slightly put all the screws in. You don't want to put them in all the way. That way you've got some room for adjustment. And again, I'll say the same thing, go about 50% in and then stop. That way you get that rail-like structure where you can slide this up and down. And one more time, the easiest way is going to be doing the opposite corners. That way you have some leverage to use and keep it in place. Again, just 50%. Now you can see it slides up and down. Let's do the others real quick here. Next, we'll take another FA12. Again, make sure the orientation is correct so it looks clean and nice and tidy from the side. We're going to route the cable through, just like we did with the other one. Then we're going to slot it in right below. And for this one, make sure you push the top fan up. That way you have enough space to align this inside the next set of available slots. So push that in. Again, 50% in. And then we'll do the opposite corner in the bottom. Push that in. Again, 50% of the way. And then we'll do the opposite corners that are still remaining. And then lastly, our final fan. Again, one last time, just make sure you're orienting it correctly so it lines up and looks nice from the inside. And then obviously push the other fans up and slide this one into the bottom. And of course, we can route this cable out the back as well to make it nice and tidy. We'll work on the cable management after. Let's just focus on getting the fans in for now. Slide this up. And again, we've got the rail structure, right? So you can push this in, slide it around. Again, 50% of the way. Get the opposite corner. That way it stops sliding down into the case. This one too, 50%. Then let's do the other two that are still remaining. Now that we've got them all in there, what we want to do is we're going to make sure we place them so all of them are giving proper airflow and clearance from anything down below. So make sure you're keeping aesthetics in mind. You're able to see these from the other side, so if you want an even gap, I would recommend doing that and doing them dead center. And the easiest way to stop these from sliding is to screw in the bottom. So very bottom, screw those two in, and once those are secure, the rest of your fans should stay in place. Then work on the top so you don't accidentally push it up. Screw it in all the way. Right? And then the remaining screws, you can feel free to tighten all the way now that we've got it all in position. No particular order needed here because we've secured the top and the bottom. These aren't going anywhere. Again, just be careful not to over tighten these. They could potentially break through the sides depending on the type of screw you have and the head it has. So let's just keep it a little bit safe. Keep a little bit space towards the end. Trust me, these fans are not going anywhere. They're fully and securely in place. There we go. There we have it. We've got, well, let me see if I can do math, 7 FA12s installed in the X50 so far. We've got three on the side, feeding fresh air into the chassis. We've got 3 on the bottom, feeding fresh air into the chassis from the cold floor cooling. And then we've got 1 in the back, exhausting that hot air out the back of the case. So up next, we've got our front-mounted 360mm AIO. Let's go take a look. All right, now that we have our fans in place, it's now time to install our front-mounted 360mm liquid cooler. And for this, we're going to be using the iBuyPower AW4 today. The first thing we want to do is take off this front full coverage micro mesh panel from the X50. This is then going to expose the modular multi-mounted radiator system that we have up front. Now, the cool thing about this modular multi-mount is it gives you the flexibility in terms of fitment, compatibility, and aesthetic tuning all in one. Let me quickly explain how it works. So, in an airflow-oriented case, you typically want to have either your fans looking outside if you're looking at the front of the case, or if this case is going to be off to the side, maybe you want your fans on the inside. And this might be if you have RGB fans, for example, right? So if you have RGB fans, some people might prefer, hey, I want to see them through the front of my case. Some people might prefer, oh, I want to see them on the inside of my case because I'm sitting right next to it. And so what this allows you to do is it allows you to put the radiator and the fans on either side of this mount, as well as pull it out and push it back in if you have a thinner radiator, a thinner cooler, or a super thick radiator and a super thick cooler. It gives you that flexibility for compatibility, plus that aesthetic tuning we talked about earlier. So depending on how you like your RGB, you can arrange it however you like. In terms of compatibility, the radiator size can be up to 360 millimeters long. However, the fans, we do actually support triple 140 millimeter fans up front here on this multi-mount radiator system. So let's go ahead and take out the front radiator mount. The first thing we're going to do is unscrew this up top center right above the mounting system. Once we have that out, we're going to have one more down below. Same thing towards the middle of the case at the bottom. Unscrew that. And then that'll allow you to take the entire bracket out from the front of the case. Now the cool thing about this is it has two mounting points. Let me just quickly and safely take these screws completely out. That way we can set them aside. Now, the cool thing about this design is, as you can see, we have these notches up here on the top, and we have notches on the bottom. And so what these notches allow you to do is actually unscrew this little bit right here, up top and on the bottom. And this is done by unscrewing, again, the top center of this alignment. And so the spacer will basically notch into the case at these four distinct points and allow you to move your cooler or your fans closer up front or further to the back of the case. And so the way it works is you have these little hooks inside this spacer. Basically hook them in to any of these 4 points on this mounting bracket. And that way, as you can see, I'll kind of demonstrate for you here, on the farthermost one, this actually slides in the closest because the mount is moving closer into the system. That way, if you have a thinner radiator or if you have a smaller GPU and you want more of your radiator and fan to be inside the case, you can do that. But now, let's say you have an extra thick radiator and you want more of it to take up space on the front of the case and take up less space inside. So in that case, I'm going to slot this into the very end of the chassis, align that, and as you can see, this now comes out a lot more, which means you have more space for your radiator and fans up here, impeding less on the space you have for your GPU on the inside of the chassis. So again, that full multi-mount radiator system gives you 4 distinct points to choose from where you can mount your radiator and fans inside the case. For this one, let's go ahead and use the third one. That way we get plenty of space outside for our radiator, and we can put the fans, the Taro fans, on the inside so we can appreciate how they look. And so the first thing I'm going to do is slot this spacer into the third position, and then screw it back in to secure it in place, right? That way it's not wiggling around while we try and screw our fans and radiator in. There we go, fully secure. I'm going to double check on the bottom. We are also in the third position. We are currently in the fourth position. So I'm going to take this screw out. Realign that back to the third position. Screw it back in. And now that you've seen me screw it in on the bottom and on the top in the third position, I know what question you're wondering. Ish, what happens if I forget which way is up? Well, good news for you, both sides are up and both sides are down. We thought about this. So, doesn't matter, whatever orientation you put it in, right? It's going to be symmetrical and it's going to fit just fine if you flip it upside down, whatever happens, right? That way you don't have to worry about keeping a certain orientation in check. A lot of our competitors do that, and it's really annoying. So you won't have to do that in the X50. We thought about it for you. So now in terms of aesthetics, we talked about wanting our fans on the inside to match the look completely inside the case. So let's go ahead and bring the radiator on over, and we'll install the FA12 fans matching in Taro Milk colorway on the radiator first. Now, when installing the fans on the radiator, we want to be mindful of how it's going to be placed inside the case, right? So in this case, we're going to bring it out this way. So this is going to be up in the front, and then these tubes are going to come in from the top and onto the CPU across the RAM. So you definitely want to test fitment this first outside of the case, kind of just align the radiator up and make sure you visualize how you plan on installing it, because that's really going to be what depends on the routing of your fans and the orientation of how they look. So in this case, the fans, their cables are going to face this way, and we're going to have the exposed frame section facing the inside of the case. Why? Well, because again, the blades push air through the fan to the back. And so we're wanting air coming in through the radiator towards the front of the case. So we're going to orient them this way, and then we'll screw them in. So just align them very quickly. Make sure whatever fans you have fit your radiator. I'm assuming you guys either are using the fans that came with it, or you might be buying one of our FA12 packs, again, available on Hyte.com in matching color sets with our cases, especially with the X50. Come in a 4-pack, that way you get 3, which is plenty for your radiator, and then 1 for the back of your PC. So line them up, make sure it fits, and then let's get to screwing these in. Now, an important thing to note here is that I am using longer headed screws than what is provided. Again, these are specifically for screwing fans into radiators. Keep in mind, these are not included with the FA12. So if you do want to use FA12 on a radiator, you're going to have to provide your own screws, which your radiator should typically come with. So for now, since we are very light on the amount of screws that we have handy, we are going to just do the simple crisscross method. So I'm going to be crisscrossing all these into the radiator. That way they're secure on both sides. But as I mentioned earlier, for your use case, I would 100% totally recommend you use whatever screws that came with your radiator for your fans, and make sure you use all of them. That way you are properly securing every single thread and every single hole that you have for the fan into the radiator mounting. So now that we've got our fan screwed into the radiator, what we're going to do is we're going to take our front mounting bracket, we're going to slide it gently in beneath, and then we're going to flip this on its side. And what this will allow us to do is actually align the radiator inside the bracket before we slide it in from the front of the case, which will make it a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do now is screw the radiator into the case's front mounting, just lightly screwing in. That way we, again, as we mentioned before, keep it as an on-rails structure where you can slide it around freely in case you want to adjust later. The easiest way is going to be doing the 2 corners first. So we go through there. Now, you can either do this on a table or you can do this inside, but it might be easier given the size, the weight, and everything else along with your radiator to do it on the table. That way you have less impedance to work around with. Remember, you don't want to over tighten again and risk pushing the screw head through the rails. That wouldn't be good. So once you feel a nice little resistance and you feel it's secure, stop screwing. Okay, now comes the easy part. Slide your pump cap in through the front of the case. Get all your wiring in here. And then, just like that, boom, slot it in to the front of your case. For the last part, we're going to screw this back closed and secure this front multi-mount radiator bracket to the X50 again. Top is done. Don't forget, there's 2 sides to this bracket. Get both the top and the bottom. And there we have it, fully secure. Now let's flip this down and get ready to mount this on our CPU. All right, so now that we've got our cooler inside the case and fully secured, now what we're gonna wanna do is obviously attach it to our CPU. Now, for this, I would highly suggest you refer to your cooler's manual, because how you mount each type of cooler and how you secure it to the CPU is gonna be completely different depending on the manufacturer, the make, the model, etc. So for this one specifically, we've got these standoffs that are nicely provided for our AM5 mounting. So I'm just gonna screw these in with my thumbs, not over tightening it, because then if we need to swap at any time in the future, we wanna make it easy for ourselves later. So don't over tighten today, that way you can really easily undo it tomorrow. So now we're gonna take our AM5 cooler, align it with these standoffs, push it into place, and then we have spring nuts included. So we'll take these spring nuts and gently secure each corner. Lightly thread the corners. Again, for this part, you wanna make sure you're distributing pressure evenly. So screw it in a few times in the top left, then a few times in the bottom right, then rotate to the top right, and then to the bottom left. Now from here on, you can continue using your thumbs to screw it in and tighten slowly. Once you start feeling a little bit of resistance and your fingers are having a tough time, let it go. Switch to the next corner. Same thing, let it go. We're gonna switch to the top left now. Okay, I'm feeling it now, letting it go. Bottom right. And letting go. So now that we've got it fully secured with our thumbs, I'm gonna go in with a screwdriver and just give it one final tightening down. So you can see it's a little loose. Be very gentle-handed. You don't wanna use too much torque and accidentally over tighten, especially not on the CPU, because you don't wanna risk any damage to your motherboard pins. That's very expensive repair. So once you lightly kind of turn it around and you feel it tightening down, do that on all four corners. Again, continue with the crisscross style to get even pressure on all sides. And there you have it. We have our cooler fully secured inside the Hyte X50. We'll just quickly route these cables out to the back. Pushing that all the way through. Really helps that we have those nice full coverage color matched silicone grommets throughout the case. So easy routing to the back. And there you have it. We've installed our cooler into the X50. All right, now that we've got our power supply, we're gonna go ahead and install it into the X50. Installing the power supply is actually very easy thanks to this generous amount of space we built into the back of the system. Now, in terms of orientation, you wanna make sure the fan is facing the bottom when you install it. That way, it's actually taking in the air from the case and exhausting it out the back. We've made sure the cutout is towards the bottom. So just make sure to line your fan right and go ahead and just slide it right in. It's gonna fit right into the chamber, no problem. Up to 223 millimeters long, power supplies will fit just fine. Now, in terms of cabling, well, you can either angle it this way and install your cables in and then slide it, or you can pre-route all your cables that you're gonna need and then do that later. Let's go ahead and slide it in, and then we'll attach the cables and then just angle it when we're ready. First up here, we've got the motherboard 24 pin. We're gonna go ahead and connect that to the power supply over here. Again, this is gonna vary per power supply. I would highly advise you look at your power supply user manual for this step. We're just simply showing you how a power supply fits in the X50, how to route the cables, and how to make it easy for installation. Then, we've got our CPU 8-pin cable. We're gonna plug that in right here. Then we're gonna get additional CPU 8-pin, because this motherboard has two 8-pin connectors. And then lastly, we're gonna get our GPU cable. Now, again, depending on your GPU, if you're using a 50 series or newer, you might have the new 12-volt 2x6 connector. If you're using an AMD GPU, or you're using an Intel Arc GPU or an NVIDIA GPU from older generations, you probably have a PCIe 8-pin. So in this case, we're using a PCIe 8-pin. We're gonna slot that into the PCIe connector section. And there we have our main motherboard cables ready to go. If you have additional SATA drives or SATA devices or anything like that, be sure to connect those first and route those cables down. For our use case, we're actually gonna open up this tie-down point in the X50. We have included Velcro straps. And so one of the straps is conveniently located right here, as you can see, right next to the power supply. And what this is going to allow you to do is actually pull this down, slide this over and into the case. Make sure you hold this down below. And so when you push it to the back, you can actually easily route this and pull all these cables down easily inside of your case. That way, this Velcro strap is now securing all these cables. That way you don't have to worry about it moving around. Then you can screw in your power supply and we're ready to start routing these cables over. Now again, to keep things quick and easy, we're only going to use 2 screws and we're going to do the corners of the power supply. But obviously when you're building into your system, we highly recommend you screw in each and every single screw in all 4 locations for a proper secure fit. All right, now that we've got our power supply secure, we're going to move ahead and start routing the cables to the front of the case. Now first and foremost, we're going to route the motherboard 24 pin through the silicone rubber grommet on the side. And then we'll flip it around this way, that way you can easily see it. So now that we've routed this, we're going to slot that into the motherboard right about here. Line that up, push it in, and you'll hear a slight click when it connects. And then we can just push these cables straight back into the chassis. Next, we're going to take the CPU power cables, and we're going to actually route them through the top of the case right here. I'm going to send these through right about here, where they're actually going to connect to the CPU. So I'll slide one in. Here we can then figure out the angle, so it clips in this way. So let's go ahead and angle it right here like so. You can actually use the back of the case as an easy way to look through the silicone rubber grommet. This cable in particular is split in 2, so it's being rather difficult in terms of compliance. Plug back in and slot it straight into the CPU socket. Sorry, the CPU power connector, not the socket. Okay, so we've got that one ready. And then we'll take the other CPU power connector and route that right next to it. And we'll plug this guy in as well. Again, line up the connector, make sure it's aligned. Okay, boom, connected, routed through the top, and then we can push them down to the side once we're done. And then for the GPU cables, we're actually going to pull those through the side of the case one more time. It's going to come down from the bottom since the GPU is typically going to be slotted in right there. So we'll do the GPU in just a little bit, but for now, we'll just route these cables through, make sure they're ready for when we need them. After that, we can start connecting all the front I/O, the hidden front I/O cabling of the case itself. So first, let's take the front USB connector, go and route it through the side, and on the motherboard, it comes out here. So we're going to want to align the notch to where it is on the actual motherboard, align it, push it in, and clicks into place. And then we can route that back into the back of the case. Next, we're going to connect the front Type-C header. So let's go ahead and pull that through here to the side of the case. And then that is going to route up to this little section right here. So let's just plug that in to the front Type-C header. Make sure that slides in, clicks securely into place, and that is that. We've got our front Type-C header secured. And then we're going to have our unified front panel cabling. That is, again, a nice little extra Hyte includes is it's all unified and connected from the get-go. You don't have to worry about fishing around small wires and connecting each little one. No, it's all ready to go in one F-panel header. So, based off of your motherboard, you're going to want to find where the front panel is and connect that up. In this case, it's going to be right here, and boom, we've connected the front panel to the actual motherboard. And for this one, again, it's motherboard dependent, so please consult your motherboard manual when you're wiring this up to make sure you're connecting the correct places up to the actual motherboard and the components you have inside. We'll get to the other cabling in a bit, but let's go ahead and install our graphics card. This one already has it removed, but what you're going to want to do is check first by aligning your GPU gently with the motherboard, right? Don't slot it in just yet, but line it up and check which of the PCIe brackets you're going to need to remove to fit your GPU in the back of the case. In this section, it was actually the second and the third slot that we needed to remove to fit this particular GPU, but the sizing, the fitment is going to change depending on how many slots your GPU is. It can be anywhere from 1 slot all the way to 4 slots or more if you have multiple GPUs. So just line it up, measure it, and then you can either use your hand, these are thumb screws that are lightly screwed in, and easily remove the bracket, or you can use a screwdriver, unscrew it, and remove the bracket from the case. Once you remove the appropriate brackets, we're going to want to slot this in, line it up with the motherboard PCIe, and push and connect. As you can see, it lines up perfectly here with the case. So let's go ahead and take those 2 thumb screws and secure the GPU inside of the motherboard and into the chassis. All right, now that we have the final 2 thumb screws, we're going to align that with the GPU, screw that in back into the case, and there we have it. That's 1, and that's 2. Just like that, we have our GPU also installed into the case. And for this one, we're only going to need 1 VGA header since it's a Intel Arc GPU. So it's going to be quite power efficient. And then lastly, now that we've installed the GPU, let's plug it in, make sure that's good to go. And now for the graphics card, we'll route the GPU cable through the bottom so it looks nice and clean, comes in and connects easily and securely to this GPU we have inside the system. Now we've got all of our core components inside. And so just to run you by quickly, we installed the motherboard, we put the RAM, we put the SPF on there, we installed the case fans, we installed the radiator up front, we installed the pump cap onto the CPU, we installed the power supply, routed the cables, installed the GPU, and plugged all the main components in, which are the motherboard, the front I/O headers, the GPU, and now all that's left is to wire up all the fans, tidy it up in the back with plenty of cable management space and specially designed cable routing channels we've got in the back of the X50. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll be right back. And there you have it. We have the X50, our first modern performance case, fully built out, beautiful in all its glory, and you can go order yours right now from Hyte.com. When you get it, make sure to tag us on socials, share your builds with us. We'd love to see the fantastic builds and setups you create with our brand new case in 6 different colorways. Go order now, Hyte.com.